Good evening. I am Daniel Moore in with your VON Major News Package for today, Thursday, 21st November 2019. In our lead stories nationally, Premier Brantley lists consequences of persons that fail to file their declaration of assets with the IPL Commission, and Tropical Storm Sebastian forms as Atlantic hurricane season near end. No major cause for concern, says Brian Dyer. Regionally, 5 of 10 St. Croix women in a tax fraud and identity theft case pleads guilty. Internationally, Israel Prime Minister charged with corruption. And in sports, tennis tournament to target youths in providing various developmental skills. We'll have the details to these and other stories after this short break.
Another look.
Different from how you've seen it before.
Another look.
Takes an in-depth look into business, politics, science, technology, religion, and more.
Another look.
Featuring documentaries from the BBC, regional features, and local ones too.
Another look.
Every Monday at 3 p.m. on the Eastern Caribbean's powerhouse, Vaughan.
Welcome back, and now for the national news. Nevis's Premier, the Honorable Mark Brantley, has listed out the consequences as it relates to persons failing to file their Declaration of Assets to the Integrity in Public Life IPL Commission here on the island. The IPL Ordinance Number 2 of 2013 is an ordinance that establishes the IPL Commission, which is an independent body, in order to ensure integrity in public life, to make provisions for a code of conduct, to obtain declaration of the assets, liabilities, income, and interests in relation to property of persons in public life, for the offenses and abuse of office, and to provide for related or incidental matters. It officially opened its doors to the public on June 3, 2019, and is located upstairs the Rams shopping complex at Stony Grove. Mr. Brantley, while in the Nevis Island Assembly on a Tuesday, November 19th, presented the Integrity in Public Life Amendment Bill 2019 and explained the repercussions for persons who fail to file with the Commission.
If you're caught by the legislation and you fail to comply, or having complied with the filing deadline, you fail to provide additional particulars that the Commission so requires, the Commission can publish your name and the fact of your failure in the Gazette and in one newspaper in general circulation. At any time after such publication, if you are still refusing, the law is now saying that the Commission can go to the court ex parte. That's important because it means they can go by itself and seek from the court an order that you are in violation of the provisions of the law. And the court then can make such order, including the imposition of conditions as it thinks fit, including costs.
The Premier added that in failing to file with a stipulated time period provided by the Commission, it is an offense.
We go on further to say a person who fails to comply with the directions of the court commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine of $50,000.
The Honorable Mark Brantley. The Commission comprises of the Chairman, Attorney at Law Mr. Ricaldo V. Keynes, Mr. G. Sidney Newton, and Mr. Alford Tyrrell. With just 9 days remaining before the close of the 2019 Atlantic hurricane season, we see the formation of Tropical Storm Sebastian on Tuesday, 19th November 2019. Director of the Nevis Disaster Management Department, or NDMD, Mr. Brian Dyer, provided an update to the VON Newsline as it relates to this late storm being formed. He also moved to caution individuals and encourage them to be watchful as the season is not yet over.
It's important for us to maintain our vigilance with regard to tropical storm activity, as we still have some days to go before the official end. However, over the years, we have seen storms develop even after the close of the official hurricane season, so we still appeal to persons to be cautious. Presently, the sea conditions are a bit elevated with regards to the impact of Tropical Storm Sebastian. So we ask persons traveling between St. Lucie and Nevis beware of the choppy seas and also the beach goers who may be tempted to go further out seas and may be affected by strong currents, etc. So even though there is no impact with regards to rainfall, etc., we still want persons to be vigilant as there's some impact with regards to our transportation and for beach goers or beach activities.
He noted that despite the season is coming to a close, persons should always be prepared in the eventuality that another natural disaster or phenomena impacts the island.
We still would like to appeal to persons to be ready to act at a moment's notice with regards to any other hazard that may impact the island. Even though we're in the hurricane season we still want persons to be vigilant right down until the very end. The winter is in the northern hemisphere, so we should have some impact from with regards to the cold front affecting the island, but that would minimize the tropical storm activity as we go further into the winter. So we still want persons to be vigilant of that fact and be prepared at all times.
Mr. Brian Dyer. The 2019 Atlantic hurricane season commenced on June 1, 2019, with forecasters predicting 9 to 15 named storms. 4 to 8 could become hurricanes, including 2 to 4 major hurricanes, categories 3, 4, or 5. The season will end on Saturday, 30th November 2019. World Children's Day was on Wednesday, 20th November 2019, observed across the world and here on St. Kitts and Nevis. This year's observance marks the 30 years of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, or CRC, which recognizes the human rights and special vulnerabilities of all children, persons under the age of 18 years. The convention establishes the standards for protecting their well-being and at all stages of their development. Ratified by 195 states, inclusive of St. Kitts and Nevis, this makes the convention the most widely ratified human rights treaty in history, according to the United Nations Information Center. Here in St. Kitts and Nevis, the Probation and Child Protection Services has tied this observance to its week of activities. The unit's week of activities is being held under the theme 30 Years of Child Protection, Nurturing the Next Generation. Speaking on Thursday, 21st edition of Policing with You, Director of the Department of Gerald Connor noted the theme's importance.
We basically have made some milestones that were set within that 30 years, and we intend to make some more milestones going forward over the next 30 years, and even when we all leave, that this process continues and it is enhanced, because at the end of the day, we need to realize that our children are our future, and we need to invest daily and deeply in our future in regards to making sure their rights are protected going forward.
The director also during the program noted that on Tuesday, 19th November, as part of its activities of the department, held Corporal Punishment Suspension Day, where he outlined they focused on discipline.
We believe that once you instill some form of discipline, it does not have to be always using the whip or using the hand. But if you instill discipline at an early stage in a child's life, it is much easier for you to deal with them as they go throughout. And it will lessen the temptation to go out and use the strap or the whip. We tend to have this notion when children are younger to say, oh, they're cute and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the harm that you're doing to that child as it progresses and develops will become detrimental to you as a parent. And one day that child will even embarrass you because you have not done what you were supposed to do during the growing process to ensure that that child understands what discipline is. So when you reach to using your hand, it basically should be the last resort.
Mr. Gerald Connor. What are the reasons why a new potential candidate should run for office? That question was a part of the discussion on this week's edition of the Let's Talk program, hosted by Mr. Everett Herbert. Heavyweight panelist Dr. Patricia Bartlett weighed in on the matter against the example of the possibility of her running for office.
I would like to run, but I would not want to take money from people who have ulterior motives, because there's some people who support the politicians who we have here. They would give them the monies that they require to run campaigns, that they would require to bring in people from overseas to vote, and then at the end of it, taxpayers' money would have to go towards paying back those people.
However, heavyweight panelist Mr. Edric Stanley voiced his perspective on why a candidate should run for office.
Everybody who participates in the process is from syndicates or Nevis, as the case might be. And there are not many new ideas to bring to the table or bring to the fore. And anybody who participates in the process and tells you that they've got something new to offer to the voting public, it's a fallacy. They're not from Mars or Venus, as the case might be. They're from right here, syndicates and Nevis. And therefore, not bringing anything new to the table as compared to those who were there, run the risk of losing.
Mr. Edric Stanley. The opinions of the panelists, as well as that from a variety of callers, argued potential reasons for candidates to run for office. However, Mr. Everett Herbert addressed a key factor of the problem.
Let me ask this question. You think these ideas that we have been fleshing out here tonight from the callers, the panel, and all that, you think this is the first time these things have been presented?
No.
Okay. They've been presented, you think, all the time?
But there's no change.
Right. So why do you think that is so?
Because there's no change.
Well, sometimes pressure is brought to
Right.
bear.
And there is no change, and it is not because of the same people. You would agree that it is different people who are in the hot seat at different times. But the result is the same, right?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Because, like
so,
I said,
so if it has been happening over the past 30, 40 years, what does that tell us?
well, it means that we have not changed.
Host of the Let's Talk program, Mr. Everett Herbert. In more national news,
Now, look at the reality of this. In our parliament, mostly men there. So, why do we have laws that would push men out of the family? Why do we have laws that seem to soothe the women more than the men when the men making those laws?
Mr. Agard, you've brought up an extremely important point because it's one of the questions that I have. Are our laws gender biased?
Of course they are.
yes. That was the panel of this week's edition of Working for You. Even after celebrations of International Men's Day on November 19th, 2019, discussions continued about the treatment and reactions towards men in society. The panel on this week's edition of Working for You consisted of Director of Gender Affairs in St. Kitts, Celia Christopher, Gender Affairs Field Officer, Mr. Dion Brown, and President of the National Men's Council, Mr. Melvin Agard. The laws in question include, but are not limited to, child support and prenups. According to host of Working for You, Mr. Lesroy Williams, the absence of a father does not ultimately determine whether a boy follows his father's habits. However, President of the National Men's Council, Mr. Agard, spoke briefly on the genetic tendencies of boys, whether or not they know their fathers.
The first identifying area of a man is his biological makeup. The other areas depends on socializing and religion. Now, one of the things we keep forgetting is that I didn't have a father by my side growing up. But you know what I had? I had his genes and still have them. And so his DNA is inside me. My mother DNA is also in me. So whether he's around or not, there are certain things that I'm predisposed to do because of his DNA. And I must give an example. I used to up and down like fighting dogs and all these different things. And one day I heard some guy saying, well, he just like your father, you know, that's exactly what your father used to do. Now my father was not there. So why am I doing that? Because genetically I'm predisposed to do that.
With regards to the question, why are the family laws leaning in favor of the protection of women rather than men, this was Mr. Agard's response.
Because when we look back like maybe 100 years back coming along, you find that because of what happened in slavery, where they used to breed men in some parts of the Caribbean, like Antigua, Barbuda, and I think some say in Nevis as well, you find you're doing that there to men for a few hundred years, definitely their offspring would go with that genetic makeup that they don't have to be accountable or responsible for family. And we see that happening only in the Caribbean. You don't see that happening in China, India, not even in Africa that is happening. And that is because of that DNA that is transcend through time.
President of the National Men's Council, Mr. Melvin Agard. And finally, in our national news segment, the Premier's monthly press conference will be held on Wednesday, November 27th at 10 a.m. at the Cabinet Room on the second floor of the Social Security Building at Penny's Estate. At the conference, Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley, will provide an update on matters of national interest. Members of the press corps will also be afforded the opportunity to ask questions for the listening and viewing public. The forum will be broadcast live here on Vaughan Radio 860 AM as well as vaughanradio.com. That's it for our national news segment. You can visit us at our website at www.vaughanradio.com or visit our YouTube channel at Vaughan Radio or our Facebook at Vaughan Radio for these and other stories. News from across the region is next.
It's Christmas, and the Bank of Nevis Limited has special gifts just for you. Thinking about traveling to reconnect with family and friends, maybe purchasing gifts for your loved ones, or showing that special person in your life you care? Well, let's do it! Get an easy access loan up to $20,000 unsecured this season. Of course, that's not all. Our credit cards are easy to use and can be used anywhere in the world. So come and visit our Christmas tree this season for your mortgage, land, vehicle, and credit card presents. It's Christmas at the Bank of Nevis Limited, and we are improving the quality of life.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!
Welcome back, and now for the regional news. Out of St. Croix, United States Attorney Gretchen C.F. Shepard announced on Monday, 18th November, that Thema Liverpool, age 31, of St. Croix, pleaded guilty on the said date to conspiracy to defraud the United States. According to the plea agreement filed with the court, from January 2011 to July 2012, Liverpool and others participated in a scheme to steal money from the United States Treasury by fraudulently obtaining federal income tax refunds. The scheme involved the acquisition of personal identifying information used to electronically file falsified tax returns for the years 2010 and 2011. According to court documents, Liverpool and 9 co-conspirators filed tax returns using individuals' true names, actual Social Security numbers, and dates of birth, but falsified information regarding the individual's income earned, tax withholding amounts, credits, and other information. The scheme allowed Liverpool and others to claim tax refunds to which they were not entitled. Liverpool and her co-conspirators designated bank accounts for the receipt of the funds, which, once received, they withdrew and spent for personal use. The Deputy U.S. Permanent Representative to the Organization of American States has expressed concern about the decision of the Dominica government to hold elections without implementing electoral reforms. Alexis F. Ludwig, in an international address at the OAS on Tuesday, November 20th, stated, "We are well aware that the OAS has been very busy working on regional democratic issues, but we feel it is important to raise concerns that we have heard about the upcoming elections in Dominica to the Permanent Council." The U.S. diplomat lamented the fact that few of the recommendations that have been made by many OAS electoral observer missions that have been sent to Dominica over the years have been implemented, and highlighted the Joint Special Commission by CARICOM, the Commonwealth, and the OAS to the Dominica last August. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit has, in the first instance, accused the United Workers' Party, UWP, and other advocates such as the Concerned Citizens Movement, or CCM, of stemming electoral reforms by opposing legislation which he attempted to take to Parliament. However, the electoral reform proponents have insisted that their opposition targeted amendments that attempted to legitimize certain unlawful aspects of the existing legislation. More recently, Skerrit has downplayed the need for electoral reform, pointing out that elections are being held under the same laws that have governed the democratic process in Dominica since Dominica attained its independence. And finally, in our regional news segment, amid an international campaign for the release of a dissident, Granma, Cuba's Communist Party newspaper, dedicated an unusual editorial on Wednesday to attack the country's best-known political prisoner, Jose Daniel Ferrer, and the U.S. Embassy in Havana. Under the governments of Fidel and Raul Castro and their current successor, Miguel Diaz-Canel, the names of very few dissidents and members of the opposition have ever appeared on state media, an attempt to deprive them of public visibility. But the intense international campaign, with calls from the Amnesty International, regional organizations, and politicians from several countries to release Ferrer, seemed to have forced the government to respond with accusations of its own directed at the frequent target, the United States. Granma accused the U.S. of leading a new slander and discredit campaign against Cuba, using the arrest of the counter-revolutionary Jose Daniel Ferrer as a pretext. The unsigned editorial said Ferrer was a salaried agent serving the United States with a long history of provocative actions against the public order and legality. That's it for the regional news segment. International news is up next. Welcome back, and now for the international news. Israel's Attorney General has charged Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with bribery, fraud, and breach of trust in connection with 3 separate cases. Mr. Netanyahu has alleged to have accepted gifts from wealthy businessmen and dispensed favors to try and get more positive press coverage. The Prime Minister described the charges as an attempted coup, blaming them on a tainted process. He has also insisted he will not resign and is not legally obligated to do so. In a televised speech, Mr. Netanyahu said authorities weren't after the truth, they were after me, and called on the country to investigate the investigators. And finally, in our international news segment, measles has nearly killed 5,000 people in the Democratic Republic of Congo in 2019, authorities said, after the disease spread to all the provinces in the country. Close to 250,000 people have been infected this year alone. The World Health Organization, WHO, says this is the world's largest and fastest-moving epidemic. Measles in the Democratic Republic of Congo has now killed more than twice the number who have died of Ebola there in the last 15 months. The Congolese government and the WHO launched an emergency vaccination program in September that aimed to inoculate more than 800,000 children. That's it for the international news. Sports is up next.
Are you seeking to upgrade or renovate your business or home office space? Then this information is just for you. TDC is having a massive furniture sale. Yes, the prices have been slashed. Save up to 20, 30, 40, 60, no, 70. Save up to 75% off office furniture. Visit our office furniture showrooms today in St. Kitts and Nevis. See stores for details. Offer good while stocks last.
Welcome back, and now on to sports. Liamega Awali is set to host its inaugural J5 tennis tournament. The tournament is sanctioned by the International Tennis Federation. The event will commence on Saturday, 23rd November and will conclude on Saturday, 30th, 2019 at the Warner Park Tennis Center. The junior or J5 competition targets youths up to 18 years of age and will see youths from age 14 participating. According to President of the Association, Mr. Joaquin Shiverton, one of the pillars of their strategic plan is youth development, which targets at-risk youth by getting them into a more proactive and holistic activity. He noted that this will aid in not just their skill development, but their social development, cognitive skill, and their rational thinking, amongst others.
Tennis is a vehicle that we see can achieve that goal. In fact, just the scoring itself and the way the game is played, where it starts with love, it starts with their shaking the hand, it starts with them exhibiting respect and the ability to resolve a match, basically, whether you're down and to come back to win, or these type of social values and skills which the game has been known to instill in its players is what we believe provides the ability and the vehicle for young individuals to be able to transform themselves to tennis and transform their various communities.
He also outlined how the event came to fruition.
After we had revived the association in 2017, it was our desire to get back into international competition and at the same time to allow our players to have international competition brought to our shores, so they not only could seek to develop themselves but also get the kind of exposure necessary to take the next step on their player pathway. So shortly after we had crafted our strategic plans, we filed and made application to the ITF to be able to host one of these particular tournaments, which we did November last year. And we got the approval in February 9th. In fact, the ITF clearly said to us that they hadn't seen any activity from St. Kitts and Nevis in a while, and we're very happy to push forward the approval for our event.
Mr. Watkins Shiverton. In football, Tite's side, who lost to Argentina on Friday, had not recorded a win since lifting the Copa America in July. But Lucas Paqueta's early header and Felipe Coutinho's superb free kick put the five-time World Cup winners in charge at the break. Juventus fullback Danilo rounded off the scoring with a powerful drive from the edge of the penalty area. Liverpool goalkeeper Alisson and his club colleague Fabinho both appeared for Selecao, with Everton Richarlison and Manchester City forward Gabriel Jesus also starting. And finally, in our sports segment, in basketball, Pittsburgh Pirates pitcher Felipe Vasquez was denied bail on Tuesday as prosecutors in Pennsylvania added 21 additional felony counts to his child sexual assault case, U.S. media reported. Vasquez, 28, was detained in September after law enforcement agents obtained information that the Venezuelan star had a sexual relationship with a 13-year-old girl. Vasquez was initially charged with computer pornography and soliciting a child in 2007. That's it for sports. The weather is next. The weather tonight, partly cloudy to cloudy skies with a 70% or high chance of showers. The weather tomorrow, partly sunny skies with a 60% or moderate chance of showers. Winds northwest tonight, shifting to the north tomorrow at 7 to 19 kilometers per hour or 4 to 10 knots, becoming variable or calm at times. Seas 1.5 to 2.1 meters or 5 to 7 feet, with northerly swells of 1.8 meters or 6 feet. A high surf advisory remains in effect. Sunrise tomorrow 6:18 a.m. Sunset tomorrow 5:35 p.m. And that's how we wrap up the major news package for today, Thursday, 21st November 2019. Before we go, let's take a look at the headlines once again. Nationally, Premier Brantley lists consequences of persons that fail to file their declaration of assets with the IPL Commission. And Tropical Storm Sebastian forms as Atlantic hurricane season nears end, No major cause for concern, says Brian Dyer. Regionally, number 5 out of 10 St. Croix women in tax fraud and identity theft case pleads guilty. Internationally, Israel's prime minister charged with corruption. And in sports, tennis tournament to target youths in providing various developmental skills. On behalf of the rest of the news team, I am Daniel Moore, wishing you a pleasant evening.